All right, let's begin the webinar. So thank you everyone for joining us today morning. Today we'll be going to the webinar for IoT in workplaces and the new normal spaces, which is being facilitated by EmiratesGBC Corporate Members Siemens. Myself, my name is Jason John, and I work for the Emirates Green Building Council as the technical engineer. We handle a lot of the technical programs of the council. And for those of you joining us for the first time or want to know a bit more about the Emirates Green Building Council, we are a non-profit, non-governmental organization that was formed in 2006 with the goal of advancing green building principles here in the UAE. Our vision is for the UAE to be the global leader for sustainability in the built environment, and we achieve this through our mission, which is to act as a catalyst for collaboration and a hub for excellence to promote sustainability of the built environment. We do this through a number of our programs that we run all year round, and one of the programs that we run is our educational technical workshops. So this is held every month, which is facilitated by our corporate members. So just a bit of housekeeping before we begin the webinar. So you'll see on your control panel on the right hand of the screen, everyone should have a control panel. So everyone who is on call today, apart from myself and our facilitators, are on mute, and there will be no verbal questions during the webinar. If you have any questions that you would like to ask the facilitator, I would recommend that you put them down on the questions tab on your control panel on the right hand side. We will be monitoring the questions as they come in, and towards the end of the webinar, we will address the questions that have come through. So please be sure if you have any questions just to tap them out immediately, and we'll get to them towards the end of the presentation webinar. The other things that I would like to share is, so after the webinar, we will be sharing the recording of the presentation, so everyone will have the time to go over the presentation and review if there's anything specific you want to go back or listen to again. As you exit the webinar, a survey will pop up, so I would also ask that all the attendees would kindly fill out the survey, as this helps us plan our future webinars that we will be offering throughout the year. And lastly, if don't forget to follow EmiratesGBC on social media, and you can use the hashtags EGBC webinars and Let's Get Technical to show your support of our educational programs. So without further ado, I will introduce our facilitator for today from Siemens, Mr. Tejas Vishwanath. Tejas has 13 years of experience of consulting, project and business development in smart solutions. He has expertise in leading teams for solution delivery, digital marketing, and tech program management. Currently, he works as the head of digital enterprise business for Siemens in the Middle East. He is responsible for driving digital value proposition, actively engaging the market, and driving regional businesses for digital offerings. So I believe Mr. Tejas has the absolute expertise in delivering today's webinar, which is absolutely essential in today's COVID-19 situation. A lot of businesses and organizations are looking to sort of work remotely, with big companies such as Google, Microsoft, and Twitter all having announced that they will be working indefinitely for the rest of this year. So it's really up to us and organizations, and especially the construction sector, to look and see how we can adapt those solutions and how we can become more resilient in working for a different future, and hopefully a more sustainable future. So without further ado, I'm going to be passing it on to our panelist, to our presenter, Mr. Tejas. So Tejas, you should have control right now, so you should be able to share your screen.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jason. Good morning, everyone. Jason, please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, confirmed. We can see your screen.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much once again. Hello and welcome, everyone, and good morning to you all. We are coming to you from, at least I am coming to you from my home office. I'll also turn on my camera so you can see me. And the reason why we are all working from home is quite well known, and Jason gave a very good introduction that most of the large companies have decided that they will stick to working from home for the rest of the year. But I would also like to mention that we as Siemens are going to be working from home permanently at least 2 to 3 days a week. So certain roles which may need to be in the office may continue going into the office on a daily basis, but that's by choice. So to create more flexibility and use this to our benefit, we have adopted a new normal of working in the workplace. So today's topic is about IoT solutions for resilient workplaces. And when I say workplace, I don't mean offices only. We're talking about everything that could be a workplace for anyone. For a doctor, a hospital is a workplace. For a factory worker, his industrial plant is a workplace. So when we say workplace, I would like you to broaden your horizon from just commercial buildings and consider logistics, airports, hospitals, because not every facility can allow people to work from home. Doctors cannot work from home, factories have to run in full capacity. So there have to be solutions that can create safer and better workplaces for employees, at the same time protecting the well-being of the employees. And that's what the core topic of today is. The requirements of the workplace have changed, and these kind of buzzwords or the latest terminologies, social distancing, contact tracing, information up to date, and cleaning, sanitization has become a new normal now. When you go to the store, you'll see practice social distancing, keep a 2-meter distance. Cinemas, maybe alternate seats are closed. People don't want to travel because they're very worried about the proximity of sitting with other people in an aircraft. So there are various things that are actually driving the topic of how workplaces should evolve today. First thing we saw is every place immediately went into a lockdown or shutdown, where the least risk was allowed everyone to work from home. Now, then they started reintroducing the employees back to work. There were certain immediate measures that were taken, such as putting up stickers to remind people to practice social distancing. In elevators, people have to adhere to a certain capacity so that you allow that social distancing. Everyone had to start wearing masks. So there was, again, a difference of opinion of different countries saying, how do we go about the masks, and do we actually really need to wear them in closed spaces or in open spaces? A lot of people were debating about that, but now more and more, as we see, a lot of countries are adopting wearing masks. And even if you go into the office, you see everyone actually wearing a mask. Who thought of this about 6 or 8 months ago, that we'll all be walking around with masks? That's how rapidly this global pandemic has actually created a change. While it is a challenge, it is also an opportunity for workplaces to adopt technology and create a better value for their employees as well as themselves as businesses. So if we look at 3 phases, we break this down into 3 main phases. We are looking at phase 1, which was the crisis management phase, where a lot of people other than the essential employees were asked to work from home, primarily to reduce the density and to reduce contact and exposure and limit the risk. But at the same time, companies had to rapidly evolve their communication and their VPNs or remote working practices and technology, like introducing Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or shifting meetings virtual, making information available remotely. If you had a central server where you could only access it from the office, IT had to step up. And IT did a fantastic job in every organization, big or small, in enabling people to work from home. The amount of effort they had to put in that short span of time to allow almost 100% of the workforce to work from home was phenomenal. And we are not talking about the IT aspects, but yes, there also, if you see, technology was the key driver in keeping businesses running during the crisis management phase. And the crisis management phase, or phase 1, is more or less over for majority of the countries, but some countries are seeing a spike in infections again. So there is wave 2, wave 3. There are talks of multiple waves of infection coming. touch wood, UAE has been fortunate because the cases have constantly been going, but some of the other countries are not the case. If you look at Melbourne, they went into lockdown again. Hong Kong, the same thing. So this issue is not yet known of how it will pan out in the future. So companies are constantly still being very cautious. While UAE or Dubai has allowed 100% capacity in offices, people still don't feel comfortable. So there is still a factor of risk and building employee trust, which is needed. And that's what companies are trying to do. And until the time you feel comfortable being in the office, no one can force you saying you have to be in the office all days a week. Maybe some of you would be going in a few days a week. Some of you maybe still continue to work from home like myself. I only go, if needed, 2 to 3 weeks once. Otherwise, I can do everything from home. And a lot of my colleagues also do the same. And same may be applicable to you. The second phase is entering or workplace re-entry, where we are allowing a limited capacity. That's where we are seeing currently a lot of countries in, where they're allowing about 30% to 50% back in the workplace when it comes to offices. But when it comes to other facilities like warehouses, because of e-commerce, all of us shifting to online shopping, logistics needs to run in not full capacity, but maybe additional to what they were previously running to cater to the existing needs. So such facilities like hospitals and factories and logistics are running in overdrive mode, in higher capacity than what it was actually. So when you're getting such number of people back into the workplace, and because you're a critical business or you're allowing critical employees to come back into the workplace, you want to make sure you are reducing the people density and reducing and limiting the number of points of contact. At the same time, making sure that you are maintaining the employee health. You're able to identify any person who was infected, any potential contact with that person, and isolate, because businesses cannot afford to shut down. In spite of the pandemic, why are businesses reopening? Because we can't go back into a lockdown just because of the impact it has on the economy. Businesses have to run, people have to be in the workplace, people have to be in the factories to churn out whatever they are doing. Medical staff have to care for people, and hence businesses have to run. There is no way that people can remain at home. Hence, technology plays a very important role ensuring the safety of those critical employees who are back at the workplace. And the last phase is business continuity. After COVID is over, or this becomes a new normal, you might have all read articles which says companies have adapted working from home, or the density in the workplace has changed. People are reducing the real estate footprint. All of these are different articles that are coming out, and everything we term it as the new normal. And during the new normal, businesses need to continue running. And for that, that's the business continuity phase, to allow people to freely come in and go based on a certain protocol. At the same time, how are we able to track and do contact tracing? I will talk a little more about contact tracing towards the end of the presentation in more detail. But for now, these are the three key phases that I wanted to leave you with. How do we foster employee trust, or how do we build employee trust and reduce risk at the workplace? Just because I say, yes, the workplace is sanitized, we have blocked off certain desks, we are giving you free masks, is it adequate? Do people feel comfortable coming into the office? There may be employees who have elderly at home. There may be people who have chronic illness living with them at home, or they may have children who are risk prone. So how do I actually segregate all of this? That is a key criteria now to ensure that employees feel comfortable and confident getting back to the workplace. And that's why companies are investing heavily on getting professional sanitization done, and they're documenting that, providing that information to the employees so they can themselves witness all of this that is happening in the workplace. So if you look at it from a top down, first thing for the C-level executives or the management of a company is primarily risk management. Things like, do we even open? If we open, who needs to come in? What should we do in case there is a case? What parts of the office should be open? How should we run production? Will there be a demand? Malls, some restaurants, if you see, are continuing to remain closed because a restaurant doesn't make profit if there is no certain amount of footfall. If they don't do 60 or 70%, there is no point in running the restaurant because the cost outweighs the benefit of running it. So these And at the same time, if I do not practice and I allow it to run at full capacity, what if there is an incident? How will it cost my business in the future? So these are the things that the executives are talking about it. At every steerco or every weekly status update meeting, COVID-19 and return to work is the highest priority for people. Yes, in the construction industry, work is still going on, but there also, if you see there is an outbreak, construction has to stop, there is a delay. So there also people are thinking, how do we actually maintain this? The impact of construction stopping for a few days may not be as significant as a factory shutting down for a few days, because there's been millions of dollars of loss in production and supply chain. Then comes the second tier of employee or the management, which is your EHS, human resources, and your real estate people. For them, implementing all the measures that are being put in place by the management is very critical. If you look at every business, in your businesses itself, HR is taking measures to allow certain people to work from home. Real estate and FM is allowing people to come into the office, but they're doing temperature screening and they are doing masks or sanitization of the desks and ensuring there are certain policies in place. And those policies constantly need to evolve because the regulations are changing from the government. At the same time, they may have internal regulations which actually have to be adhered to. Certain companies, like for example, Siemens has a global mandate of how you go back to the office. In spite of that, there may be a local regulation which allows you to do certain things or doesn't disallow you. So maybe the teams have to constantly evolve that. Finally, we come into the platform part, which is accessible to the employees. All the stuff we are doing, all the changes we are making at the workplace, everything that we are pushing in terms of information, all of us may be getting multiple circulars. HR may be sending circulars where they say, this is how we are going about making the change, and this is how people are interacting with each other, or these are our new policies. You have to exhaust your leave. We have revised work from home policy, revised fixed asset policy where you can take your monitor home or you can bring the office chair home. All of these are different circulars that are constantly coming out, and keeping track of all this information is very important. And that's the reason your communications teams will be doing a fantastic job in sending all this information out, because now most of the workflows is at home. They need to be constantly engaged and informed. At the same time, we need to continue to drive their productivity. Second part is, how do we manage and monitor the portfolio? There may be, we are talking about office space, or we're talking about hospitals, we're talking about warehouses. How do we actually see the space being utilized? Certain spaces are underutilized because of limited occupancy. How do I use the data, and how do I make sure that it remains functional, or I optimize it and increase the efficiency of my systems? That is what your FM and real estate teams would be focused on. So it should be, what are we talking about is technologies that are available in the market, which actually brings all of this together and deliver services to the end users, which are primarily the employees of the company. So if we're looking at from an office perspective, this is just a user journey from an office perspective. So how do we actually go about checking if I need to go back to the office in the new normal? So let's say the company has taken certain measures and they feel that, yes, now I feel comfortable going into the office. Before I go in, because of restriction in the number of people that can be on the workplace, you could actually look at your application and book a desk where you feel safe. You can also then look for other people who are actually working or not. If people are working from home, if your colleagues are working from home or in the office, in case they are in the office, and if you have multiple floors, do you want to sit close to them so you can collaborate better? Then I say close to them with social distancing norms, obviously. Then when you get into the office after 3 or 4 month break of working from home, what are the policies that have been implemented? It should be handy. Then there, as the user journey during the day continues, there may be meeting rooms that people would want to use. And there are policies for meeting rooms also. A typical meeting room which had 10 people earlier now has been reduced to 3 people capacity because for social distancing reasons. There you have that information. Maybe you are in the midst of thinking something, you just storm into a meeting room with your colleagues and sit down. Technology should be able to alert people saying, hang on, you are actually breaching the limits of this room. For your own safety, could you reduce occupancy? And that message or notification can go as a push notification to the employees. Then after you finish meetings or so, you want to go actually wash your hand, Yes, maybe certain sections of the office are closed, or you may be familiar with your office because you've been sitting in the same place. But now, because of the restricted capacity, the office may become more flexible, or you may have gone to a new floor which you're not aware of. And there may be certain ways you need to navigate in the workplace to avoid contact with people. They may have made one ways within the workplace. It may not be so much in the office, but if you look at factories, if you look at industrial plants, you always have certain paths you can walk because of heavy machinery movement. You can't navigate however you wish. The same concept is being seen as adopted in a lot of businesses now because they want to restrict or avoid high contact areas, which is usually the corridors. So how do I find a way to go and wash my hand? And finally, in case there is an infection in the workplace, do I have the information on hand that I can react quickly and as an employee take necessary action to either self-isolate or report it to the business saying, hang on, I may have come in contact with someone. Do you need to actually push this information out to everyone for their own safety? Everything what we're talking about is possible through software platforms and integration between existing business systems itself. So if you go into something, if you want to look at how we be able to precise and look at it, these are some of the use cases that we are able to push through applications and sensor technology. One is safe occupancy management. Like we said, enabling conference room booking or desk booking in an office to ensure social distancing. So dynamically, if I assume John comes and sits on a particular desk, 4 desks around him should be blocked off automatically. So people are not sitting right next to each other. You don't want to leave the same desk bookable, maybe because people are not comfortable sharing desks because of sanitization and because of infection reasons. You may make all the desks bookable, but with the software, you're making sure that if one person in the team comes and the limit is only 50% and there is a team of 10 people, one person comes in, you automatically block off 2 or 3 desks around him because you reduce the capacity of available desks for that particular team. So you're dynamically adjusting the capacity that is available in the office based on the occupancy and ensuring social distancing. Second thing is demand-based cleaning. You go into a meeting room, either the minute the meeting is over, people should not be able to book a meeting room immediately after that. So there should be technology that can detect a meeting is finished and raise a ticket to the FM. So they come and do sanitization or cleaning of that meeting room so that in the calendar, there is no back-to-back meeting possible. Once a meeting is booked, the system should automatically block off 15 minutes or 30 minutes after a meeting. So anyone who wants to book a meeting can only book that after the cleaning slot. And that should be the intelligence which can be built into software which pushes that information to your calendaring system or your Outlook or your Office 365 or Google Calendar. So there are no back-to-back meetings, so you're limiting the risk of exposure. Same time, if in case you go to a desk and you see that you're not feeling comfortable, there should be certain types of technology, as you can see on the screen, a QR code on every desk where you scan it, and that immediately triggers a ticket to the FM for them to come and do deep cleaning and sanitization. Employees may not know what is the desk number or how do I actually raise a ticket. If I have to go to the meeting room and I have to say, on an email and say, I'm on the 5th floor, can you please send cleaners to clean the left corner desk by the window? Hang on, you may know what the left corner desk is. If you're not standing there witnessing which desk they're being cleaned, a cleaner may come and clean the desk right beside you and walk away. And your desk, you may feel that it is still comfortable. So navigation and triangulation of that information is critical, and deploying stuff like QR codes on each desk can help immediately trigger a cleaning request, or in a meeting room or in a coffee station or a water dispenser. You see someone actually touching the water dispenser in an unsafe way, you immediately trigger a cleaning request saying someone touched this, I want you to sanitize, so the people can make sure that it is a safe and healthier environment. Be it masks are over in the dispensing station, same thing. You request for action from the facility team to replenish whatever is needed in that particular space. Third aspect is contact tracing, which is super important now. A lot of countries try to do contact tracing using mobile technology and Bluetooth because it was a matter of choice for people to either download the application and use it. It was not as successful, so countries are now kind of pulled back on pushing applications like Al Hosn, which is the UAE app. Every country came up with such an app. but you may have seen that it was not rolled out, or it was not mandatory. So quite a few people on this call may not even have installed the application unless it is mandatory that you've traveled back and you need to install it. Last thing is touchless experience. Because we don't want to touch any surfaces, we want to make sure that we are able to walk in to premises without contact. So how do we use mobile technology through near field communication, or through BLE, or through Wi-Fi triangulation, or through facial recognition to enter and gain access? As you come close to the door, there should be a certain way that the system should recognize you uniquely and grant you access to the building. At the same time, it has to be secure. So cybersecurity is the most critical item now, because everyone's working from home and you are now transferring the physical access card into your mobile phone for you to scan your face and tap it. You may think that, oh, hang on, our business is comfortable doing that. Why not? Because if you see, Apple Pay and Google Pay are actually stored on your phone. Your credit card information and your banking information is securely stored with a secure token on the phone, and you use Apple Pay most of the time to pay. Similarly, if you are comfortable putting your personal banking information on your phone and it is super secure, there has not been a breach till date, how does it stop us from actually going for contactless entry, a touchless experience? Even elevators, maybe voice activated elevators, or elevators which detect which direction you want to travel, or you go in there and again, you either tap your phone or you enter the command on your mobile phone to call an elevator. And then it tells you what time do you need to actually go to the corridor, so you're not overcrowding the corridor, again from a social distancing perspective. If you leave home at 8:30, if you're reaching office at 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock is the peak time. It may take you 10 to 12 minutes to get into the building, because now the limited capacity of the elevators. What if the system can tell you back saying, hang on, today the capacity of the building, the occupancy of the building is this, and we are able to now tell you to come in at 8:40 to be very productive. You can get into your desk in less than a minute. But if you come between 9 and 9:15, it may take you about 10 to 12 minutes. So that gives you an experience of touchless experience to enter, plus at the same time increases productivity, where you're not spending time or wasting time standing waiting for the elevator. Other applications that you're thinking about software to do, command and control center was only primarily meant for CCTV cameras and FM. Now the new normal is requiring workplace command center as a single hub for you to see everything in terms of occupancy, in terms of meeting room utilization, how many cleaning requests are coming in, how many people have actually come in, what are the temperature measurements of people. None of that information is currently available on one platform. How do we push that information onto a single platform? Facilities need to actually look at that from multiple sources and have a dashboard. Why should only CCTV be important? Yes, security was given a lot of importance in the past, but now these metrics or these measures have to be given equal amount of importance. So a command and control center at the workplace is very critical to take in all this information. Second thing is employee wellness check. You may have, some of you may have implemented surveys that you need to take constantly every week. Are you feeling healthy? Had you traveled? Did you have cough? Have you been to a hospital? Various other things where you're constantly getting a pulse check of your workforce, because a lot of them are maybe at the office or from home, but you want to constantly keep a track. A lot of companies are publishing COVID dashboards for their own employees globally. There are currently these many number of active cases of our employees. These are the recoveries. These are currently active cases which we are following up. So constantly people want to be informed. So that employee wellness check is another very critical requirement. Shift planning and management. In factories or in hospitals, how do you plan the shifts to make sure you have optimal capacity for handling any exigency, but at the same time, you're also restricting or limiting the occupancy? Contact tracing. In terms of well-being experts, contact tracing, I'm parking because we have a separate section that we will speak at length. In terms of certification, all of you, because we were spending a lot of time at home during the lockdown, we did a lot of certification courses on LinkedIn Learning or various other courses through universities and got our badges. Now, in businesses we had CPR certified people, we had fire wardens, we had first aid wardens in the workplace or on an office floor. Now there may be certification courses which are on well-being and safety and those certification courses can be taken up by employees, and they come up as credentials. So if there is some issue, there are people on the floor who know how to deal with it. Emergency and crisis response, meeting someone volunteers saying, I can step in and take care of this, and finally extending it to other partners, because nobody is in this alone. We need a partner ecosystem. Siemens alone cannot do everything. There may be different people in the industry who are different things. So platforms have to be open, talking to existing systems, because businesses have invested in a lot of technology that are already in place. You may have calendaring system, you may have Active Directory, you may have a secure file storage. All of this information is currently scattered. We need platforms which can actually pull data from all of these systems, integrate, and deliver a better and seamless experience. So whatever I spoke till now was primarily the software and the application platforms part. Now I would like to switch into the IoT sensors part, or the IoT platform part, which adds precision to all of this and can accurately measure and track people or occupancy or density in the workflow itself. We're talking about IoT sensors, which are either wireless or wired, primarily wireless, because people need to install this with limited effort. And there has to be a robust system, because you can't spend time, weeks and months, deploying and commissioning the system, because the problem exists on hand today. We need technologies that can be rolled out immediately. I gave you the example of Teams. Microsoft Teams and Zoom was rolled out so rapidly that people went from working from home to working remotely. Initially, there were some teething issues, but in a week's time, everything was fine. People resorted to having virtual meetings. The power of speed and the pace at which it was deployed was what made it so successful. Microsoft did a fantastic job in actually enabling Teams for all the businesses. Similarly, if we are looking at technologies that we're putting into the place, it has to have edge processing. When we say edge processing, we are not looking at a central server sitting somewhere and doing the intelligence. The sensors have to have processing on them. They have to be intelligent. They have to be wireless, so that you don't spend infrastructure time pulling cables and wiring them up. And primarily, if they have multiple sensing capabilities, what all can we monitor with these sensors? Can we only measure occupancy? Can we measure people tracking? Can we measure energy consumption? Can we identify unoccupied spaces and report it to my BMS to ensure those areas which don't have any occupancy, the temperature can ramp up? So how are we doing sustainability? How are we doing corporate real estate footprint management? All of these should be use cases, and everything that we spoke about till now, be it contact tracing, finding available desks, finding available rooms, what is the best way to navigate. We want an IoT platform that can actually fulfill all of these use cases and more. There has to be APIs that are open and extended to other platforms, so we are able to drive all these use cases. So if you take one example, this is just a view of what the sensors can do. You see on the right side, there is normal movement in the office. How can we create a digital twin of those movements on a floor plan? That is primarily what we want to do in terms of detecting motion within the space. As you can see on the left-hand side, anyone who is moving around, the sensors must pick up that motion and store that for tracking motion, or tracking what is the occupancy, what are the areas that we need to focus cleaning on. If there is heavily occupied areas, how do I actually de-densify the space? If certain areas are not occupied, how do I actually reduce services that I'm providing to those spaces? So when you actually see it as dynamically, this looks brilliant, but what does it do in terms of historical performance? That's when the system needs to actually capture all of this data and create heat maps. If you see, deep red areas on the map are the ones which are heavily populated. Lighter green or yellow areas means there are less people in those areas. How do I actually focus my cleaning efforts? Maybe instead of cleaning all the section of the office twice daily, I could focus cleaning these areas maybe 4 times and only clean the other areas once. Or maybe air conditioning. If this information can be dynamically set to the air conditioning systems or HVAC systems, we are able to focus cooling only in these sections. Other areas could be even at 25, 26 degrees. You are now able to generate savings. And now you see these areas are not occupied. Maybe you shut them down. You don't turn on lights, you don't condition them, you close them down completely. Or you want to de-densify this space, put people from here and shift them around. So spread them out evenly. So focus your effort in terms of reconfiguration of the office. Because now, yes, primarily what people have done is they have blocked off the desks because they want to do social distancing, alternate desks are blocked. But eventually you want to use that space because you can't leave one desk space wasted. People are paying rent for that. Or in a hospital, you want to make sure all the wards are utilized because unused spaces cost money. That information can only be derived if you have sensors, if you have the platform which can actually generate this kind of occupancy data and provide the information. Cinemas, restaurants, or think of retail malls or shopping malls or large supermarkets. If certain people are not going to certain aisles, I want to move those items because I want to divert my footfall to those items. Or if I want to actually look at certain seats of the cinema are not being occupied, maybe I can actually look at reconfiguring them, making smaller. Or basically, once you have data, how you use it is up to you. Same thing, like I said, high risk pathways. We are able to generate motion trails of to seeing where do people usually come in and go out of the workplace. If you see this particular area is heavily occupied, maybe this is the lift lobby, everyone comes up here and then spreads around the office. So these parts have a high footfall. So now if this information is available, people can then decide whether they take the longer route to get out, or FM may say, this is causing a lot of bottleneck or high contact areas, so maybe I'll close this off and divert people to go around. So there is no exposure or risk to people. Or just say, these are the parts, make sure that I clean them more often than the other parts. So you are able to now optimize your janitorial services. You can see which washrooms are being used more. How do I sanitize them? Every time a space is used and vacated, an alert can be sent to your FM, like I said, for meeting rooms or desks. When you occupy a desk and you leave, after about an hour of non-occupancy, a cleaning request may be triggered, so the FM staff can go sanitize it. Or certain areas which were used, or hospital beds, the minute someone is discharged, you can actually track people to see if someone went in there and cleaned it for an appropriate amount of time. So there are various use cases that can be driven, and all of this are data captured from your sensors which are in the ceiling. Then comes the RTLS, or the real-time location part, which is basically to track people or assets in a place. And the use cases that we can drive are, one is social distancing. Yes, you may say desks have to be far apart, meeting room desks have to be, or chairs have to be further apart. All that is good. But what if people are standing in a corridor, 5 of them, and chatting away? How do you actually alert them saying, hang on, yes, as humans, we have a tendency to, we are social creatures. So we like to spend time with our colleagues and chat to them about life. What if we forget and we want to ensure that we are doing the same thing, but ensuring that we're practicing social distancing? Maybe not in an office environment so much, but if you think of a factory, you don't want people to be crowding in certain places because you don't know who is actually gone in second degree or third degree contact outside of the workplace, and how many people can get infected from it. Monitoring cleaning crew, digital contact tracing, occupancy limits, visitor management, all the points of contacts, anything that you can relate using location as services should be enabled on the same IoT platform. If you allow visitors to come in, most of the people are not allowing visitors to come into the place, but if you do allow them, you want to make sure you track them in real time so that you have the information of the journey they spent in the office, who are the people they may have come in contact with in the workplace. In case they do test positive, about a week later, you are able to check and see, did I create a risk of allowing these people in, or now that you've already allowed them in, you're able to track and see who have come in contact. As you can see on the map, with an RTLS solution, what you could do is not just identify where people are in real time, but other use cases like people tracking and asset tracking, so that you can optimize your assets. Instead of having 100 things of a particular type, you may reduce it to 50 things. For example, in hospitals, you usually see BP machines and insulin pumps or an ECG machine in every ward. Most of the time they're just standing in a corner, not being used, but because that equipment has to work at its optimal capacity, it has to be serviced constantly as well. That means that's a cost to the hospital. The reason why they all have it in every ward is because in case of an emergency, they need it handy. And the best way to do it is make sure that all the wards have it. Now, with this technology, which is actually being used currently for space management or for tracking infections, in a longer term can create business opportunities for asset tracking, where you reduce the number of assets, but you know exactly where an asset is. And in case of an emergency, you can find the shortest path from your location to the asset to get it to the patient in need. So now the hospital can reduce their inventory to 30%. That brings down their operating costs and initial capex itself, and they invest this on the IoT technology to drive all these use cases. So like I said, any technology that we are positioning today should be something that brings out value in the future. Because if we are looking at pushing only COVID-19 solutions just for now, hopefully in 6 months' time, this will be history. There is a vaccine, or maybe there is a cure, or there's basically, I'm trying to be optimistic here that we can get back to the workplace in full capacity. Then what do we do with all the investment we did just now? That's why any technology that is being positioned now should have a longer term impact or longer term benefit for the business. And all the examples I told you till now are something which allow that businesses to create, be it real estate optimization, asset optimization, people tracking, security, increasing the experience of the employees itself, changing the working policy. You allowed people to work from home. What if you gave them more time at home so there is a better work-life balance? How do I use the technology to create a more conducive environment? How do I create a social well-being for employees using technologies? Those are the things that we want to focus on using IoT, and not just the existing problem on hand. So when we say IoT for resilient workplaces, we are talking about workplaces that can constantly adapt, be it a pandemic or post-pandemic, or in a general scenario where constant evolution of people and the working policies and the new normal is being adopted. With that, I would like to move on to the contact tracing and the risk reduction part. Why is contact tracing so important? Maybe if you're looking at it from a context of UAE, you may not see the relevance of it, but because we are talking about technology that is global and that can be applicable to anybody or any other country which is in a different zone right now or different phase right now for allowing people back to the workplace, we are looking at ensuring risk reduction. If you look at any second or third wave where people are back in the office at 60% or 70% capacity, how do I immediately isolate? That's the reason why it's so important to have contact tracing. What do we mean by contact tracing? So in terms of safer workplace strategy, one is minimizing the contact, identifying the spaces which are at high risk, monitoring and executing measures that actually ensure that we are able to create spaces that are safe. Refining constantly. How do I make changes to make sure that these safe practices that we are trying to adapt are actually working? Closing desks is the first thing. Yes, closing certain areas is one. But now how do I reintroduce people back to the desk? I open the desks, or I open alleyways, I open certain rooms. How do I actually enable people to come in and reduce congestion, but at the same time make sure they're able to use? And as you're operating the space, how do I make sure cleaning and sanitization and other measures that are in place are adopted? It's a cycle. So you want to analyze, you want to refine, operate, and keep doing that. So there has to be data that is captured and shown on the platform. So on a real time, you're able to understand how the information is being processed or captured from the platform, and how is that being provided to the corporate real estate or FM or the HR teams or the management for them to understand what is working, what is not. At the same time, you want to be able to isolate any potential person who came in contact and quarantine them, or make sure they are isolated. And businesses need to take that responsibility themselves, and they want to do that because they can't rely on the governments, because they want to protect their business. Now, if you talk to a business and kind of hitting it where it hurts, what does it cost you to shut down your factory for 2 days? What does it cost you to have a reputation that in a hotel there was an infection and it spread and the hotel had to be locked down? Companies are pushing so much to make sure they get back the footfall. At this time, they can't afford to have unknowns or risks of people contacting. That's the reason we want to be able to do contact tracing. How are we able to do that? One is basically the risk reduction part, configurable density and people limits. The second is the tracing part. So if we are able to tag people either through their access cards or their mobile phones or certain type of technology that allows us to actually track and uniquely and accurately identify potential contacts, that's something that we want to actually look at. Not just today. If you have about 50 people working on a floor, people have come in and gone for about last 7 days. One of them complains about a week later saying that they are feeling unwell. That is when you want to be able to actually historically see who came in to the workplace, who met with whom, and for how much duration, at what distance, and could they be a potential contact? Could there be a potential cause or concern for an infection spread? So historically, finding that information accurately is very critical. And doing manually, saying access control information, yes, I know these 50 people came into the workplace on Tuesday and John complained that he was sick a week later, and now I want to know who are the people who have been infected. Between that week, there may be another 100 people who have actually come and gone. You can't isolate everyone. You can't test everybody unless you have accurate information. John may have sat on 5th desk on the 2nd floor. Maybe people who sat around him are potential contact, but John didn't sit in the desk all day long. He went to the washroom, he went to the cafeteria, he walked on the corridors, he touched the elevator. There are so many areas that, or he may have chatted with people in the corridor, he may have been in meeting rooms. The only way you can actually accurately track that is through RTLS or real-time location services, where you're tracking people and assets in a enclosed controlled environment like an office or a warehouse or a hospital accurately. Let's look at an example. Take an example of this screen right now. What is shown here basically is, observe the yellow dot. Yellow dot is a particular person, and the minute the dot size grows, that means there's a potential contact event, and that's what you want to look for. Yes, in real time you can see, fine, I was trying to look for John, who is a yellow dot. John actually met with this group of people, then went into the pantry, exactly the same user journey I said. He met with certain people, he walked around the corridor, then met with another group of people who are chatting here. Now you see, if someone here was infected, John is the reason of exposing this infection to this group of people. So we're looking at 2nd degree of contact, maybe 3rd degree of contact. Like, I'm replaying the video for you to understand. So in a workplace or in a hospital, if there is a patient who was infected and someone potentially came in contact with them and went to another ward, you want that person to be on your radar. In case someone reports an issue a week later, you are able to actually detect on the 7th of July between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock that day, who did John come in contact with and how many people were on that floor on that particular day, and what is my potential contact. That's what you want to actually detect in terms of algorithms for you to see accurately what was the potential exposure. At the same time, everyone would worry about privacy, saying, I don't want to be tracked in real time. I want data privacy, or I want my privacy. Privacy can be addressed in multiple ways here. One thing businesses and employees should realize is this is not being done to intrude into the employee privacy. It's primarily being done for their own safety. So education and being transparent about it is key. Businesses can take an approach where they say it's a mandatory thing. If you're coming into our office, you will be tracked, like CCTV is. If you go to public spaces, there is a sign which says you are being monitored by CCTV. That also must be a privacy restriction, but you still knowingly go into shops, you go into ATMs, you go into the metro, you go in wherever in the street. Now that has been adopted and accepted because security is critical. Similarly, contact tracing is critical for infection detection. So educating the people for using HR, using workshops is very critical to ensure that people are able to get the benefit of being in a safer workplace. If we look at it, how can companies do that? I spoke about tagging employees. Could be, let's imagine BLE tags, which are like access cards, which I showed you in the previous slide itself. Access cards are given to employees. They're active BLE tags. Each access card has a unique number. There is no mapping of the number to an employee. Randomly, access cards are issued. An employee arrives at work. They get into the office. Location services are enabled. That means there are sensors and there is triangulation. A person walks around the place. His location is tracked like we saw in the previous video, and that's stored. Good. He leaves the work, no issue. Time passes, a week, 10 days, 15 days. Someone reports or flags a COVID positive case. And that's where the contact tracing journey starts. If we had chosen the fully anonymous route where everyone had been given a card with a unique number, HR then, the person self-reports it. Say, let's assume our fictitious character, John itself, complained that he was sick. He calls the HR and says, hang on, I'm feeling a bit unwell. I've just been tested positive. I just wanted to let you know, I need to take a few days off. So the HR would say, cool, please take care. Can you give me your tag number? So John voluntarily reads out his tag number saying, my tag number is 100. Now the HR can run a search of every possible other tag that has come in contact with the tag 100 over the last 1 week or so. And they get a list of anonymous tag IDs. Those tag IDs again are published as an email to all the employees saying, anyone who is carrying tags number 80, 74, 32, you may have been potential contact with a COVID positive case. We advise self-quarantine and get you self-tested. In this way, it's a fully private, anonymous way of contact tracing. The second way is if you're mapping the badge to an employee ID and only HR stores that information. If, again, John complains, now I'm able to run a trace. I know exactly who are the other employees who John has come in contact with. I contact them privately and discreetly and advise them to be securely isolated so we are able to control the infection. The third way is we just put the information of the tags against the employee onto the platform so employees themselves can get an alert on their mobile phone saying this is a potential contact event. So there, if there are lack of privacy, if there are privacy concerns, we don't go with that route. We go with the first or second route where either HR controls all the information or in the first route where it's fully anonymous. Again, the tracking stops the minute an employee leaves the facility. The minute you're outside the factory, you're not tracked. The minute you're outside the office, you're not tracked. So there is no concern of privacy as such. And businesses have now been able to adapt this technology. And we ourselves have been in talks to actually coach people. And the only way to do this is educational and explaining why it is important. There are various types of solutions, right? We spoke about IoT solutions actually being deployed. What are the three ways that we can facilitate a safe return to work? One is the space management. Second is the employee-centered crisis management tools where you are able to encourage social distancing, optimizing the desk and conference room bookings, optimizing certain areas. And finally, RTLS services, which are today for contact tracing, but I gave you examples of wayfinding as asset tracking for the future, where you're able to actually generate better savings for a business and optimize their workforce itself. So whatever we position today to our customers or to partners have to be something which evolve. So we're looking at one IoT platform that can fulfill these various use cases we spoke about, be it from locating people or things, wayfinding and indoor navigation, safety and security in terms of surveillance and emergency response. How do I evacuate in terms of a fire? How do I know which areas are more busy? Then we're looking at space utilization in terms of today it is not a concern, but once people get back, or maybe if the same thing continues, people want to reduce their footprint. Lastly, energy management. How do we actually integrate all of this information into our lighting and HVAC systems based on occupancy and based on density of the floor? How do we actually optimize and monitor our air conditioning to be in line with the occupancy of the building. With that, I think I'm at the end of my presentation. Happy to take questions. Jason?
Perfect. Thank you, Tejas, for that wonderful presentation. So far, we haven't had any questions come in from the attendees, so I would like to ask the attendees to please type in your questions now, as we'll be taking the questions now as we go through. Whilst we're waiting on that, Tejas, I would ask you some questions of my own.
Sure.
So for the benefit of the audience, so we already know pre-COVID that the construction sector was already that the digitization and IoT solutions was already identified as an increasing trend within the industry. Now, this was pre-COVID. Now, to what extent do you see that post-COVID economy, like how has that pushed it even more further up the agenda for the construction sector?
Brilliant. I did a webinar with EGBC for digital twin a few months ago. And at that time, it was something we spoke only about construction and how do we do BIM. But now construction industry is also looking at fitting out buildings with all these kind of technology that we spoke about to ensure buildings come ready with these use cases. They don't need to actually retrofit it because they've seen the benefit of doing this. And also because companies are asking for smarter buildings or buildings that can give them more data, not just temperature data. They also want to get other sorts of data to ensure better practices. But yes, COVID has created a requirement for newer technology, but because we are in the unknown, it's still kind of wild west that we are in because the situation is evolving so rapidly. No one knows exactly what should be the direction we go in, but everyone does truly believe that IoT and sensors and applications and integration between existing platforms are key to make sure that we make buildings robust and resilient.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, also the construction itself had slowed down a bit, and now the impact may not be seen immediately, but a few months down the line or about a year down the line, the architects and designers are already trying to adapt the new technologies. How do I push that into the building itself? So the designs which are being written today are taking into account the new normal. So soon in the near future, we'll see new types of RFPs and requirements and technologies coming into the construction industry itself. But it may take a little time to actually get this rolling because, like I said, it's still a very evolving market. It's an evolving technology. It's quite new. So people are architects, interior designers, and consultants are trying to wrap their heads around it to see whether it makes sense in terms of cost. What sorts of buildings we need to propose this? Do companies actually have this kind of interest? So all those are different factors which may have an impact on how technology would evolve in construction.
Absolutely, and it was interesting to see as well that with the increased sort of digitizations that we're seeing, the for other sectors, particularly the logistics and sort of trading markets as well, they saw like their digitization because obviously when the lockdowns came into effect at different times all over the world, the supply chains themselves got really disturbed, and at some cases or the other, organizations had to immediately sort of digitize or integrate vertical integrations into their supply chains. So I think it's important to see as well, like the construction industry is a bit slow and the technology itself is rapidly advancing. So it might be some time before we see that, but I believe as well, like the supply chain as well would possibly will definitely actually look into increasing its digitization on a macro level of their operations, not just looking at the asset level.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take examples of Amazon or DHL, both of these, I'm not sure if you've come across their articles. Amazon is using AI and certain camera-based technology to do contact tracing and also ensure that their warehouse operations run optimally. Because You can't afford a person in the warehouse getting sick and spreading the infection, and you need to shut down the warehouse. That will take an impact. So they already deployed certain technologies. DHL is doing the same. They want to be able to track, make sure that their crew, because they have such a global distribution network, all their warehouses have certain technology to be able to track all of this, and also make sure that people are tracking contact tracing and infection prevention. So logistics and hospitals were the first to adapt. Construction will follow, because construction will see all this evolution. And in addition to new buildings, the existing buildings have to be retrofitted with technology, because about 60% to 70% of the buildings which we'll use for the next 20-30 years are already constructed. So we need technology that existing building owners can stick into their existing buildings to make it smarter.
Absolutely. And I believe it was, I think, a year ago, if you recall, I think Amazon had opened up a store, and I think it was San Francisco, where it was basically you walk in, you pick up a product, and you just walk out. You don't get into contact with. So at the time, like if you think back on it, it's like at the time it's like, okay, it's good, but it seemed very unique, and it's sort of like a pilot project. Like you wouldn't think
Correct.
that would be the new normal, but now we're looking at that solution and thinking like actually that might very well be the new normal. So it really goes to show that the pioneers have to be forward thinking as well, and even if it means going against the normal.
Correct. Brilliant example, Jason. This Amazon self-checkout store in I think it was in Palo Alto or in Sunnyvale. I'm not too sure. One of these places in California.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
If you look at it, Carrefour in Mall of Emirates does that kind of, not fully, but you do that click and go. You carry your barcode scanner with you on your trolley. You scan everything, drop it in your trolley. You check out yourself and you leave. You have no contact with any shopping people. You are in control of your shopping, and you scan it yourself and you leave. Randomly they check sometimes that have you made sure that you're billed, and there are people to help. But future will be you just take it from the rack, throw it in your cart, and you walk out without even stopping. Maybe facial recognition, certain types of ways to actually pay. So it's becoming a reality. And then zero contact, like if you go to cinemas like walks and stuff, they've stopped issuing tickets. There are no ticket printing machines. It's all QR code. You have to mandatorily use it on your phone, scan and enter.
Exactly. I think.
And if you see, another brilliant thing you said was pioneers have to be forward thinking and disruptive. So if you look at the likes of Tesla, which is actually a battery company making the most amazing electric cars, SpaceX, which everything what Elon Musk does is futuristic, right? So they are setting the ground for how future of transport should be. Similar to that, there are companies coming up with new technologies for our industries. And I think it's just the first mover advantage, because we don't see this as a challenge, but we see this as an opportunity for us to create newer types of spaces or change the existing spaces itself.
Absolutely. And I just want to go back to a point that you had mentioned earlier on the existing buildings that have to be retrofitted to incorporate these new technologies. As you mentioned that these buildings are already existing and they're going to continue existing for the next 20-30 years. So we definitely have to look into making sure that these buildings are also performing to the as good as the new buildings that are come up, smart. So how do you think owners and organizations and landlords and even developers to a certain extent, how would they balance this investment into these solutions with the fact that the future of the workplace is going to be flexible? You're not going to have as many people coming into the office anymore, but they still
Correct.
need that space in case people do come in. So how would you balance out that investment?
So amazing. Again, we've been talking with companies like the real estate providers, who actually their initial model was building spaces and making sure they rent them, and they are able to generate the highest profitability, and they're able to rent the spaces better. But now they may have to revisit their lease contracts, because people don't want to sign a 10-year lease anymore. People want to sign a shorter term lease that you are able to actually change your configuration. Today, I would take 10,000 square feet Tomorrow I realize 10,000 square feet is too much. I want to actually break it into give away 3,000 square feet and retain only 7,000, or I want to grow. There has to be a flexibility. So landlords, if they want to actually make their spaces attractive, they have to think about how they lease their spaces. Second thing is, landlords also want to actually make their spaces with some amount of technology, because if you as a company need to decide, I want to rent a space and I'm paying X dollars per square meter, and I get these things, my budget is X dollar per square meter, but I also want these other things fulfilled. So any real estate or landlord who can provide that fares better, or is a preference for larger companies. We are not looking at smaller players now. We're looking at the giants, like all the companies you named: Twitter, Facebook, Google, Microsoft. All these multinationals which actually have a huger workforce. These companies will actually be after spaces which enable their vision for creating a smarter office or a smarter workplace. So landlords need to create some amount of smartness in their building to differentiate themselves from another building, because there may be 5 buildings on the same street, all of them similar rent. One of the buildings may have destination control elevator, one of them may have certain types of touch-free entry. That gives you brownie points over other buildings which are in your vicinity.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, like as things progress, as technologies advance, everyone on the market has to remain competitive just to stay on the market. So it would likely follow that even landlords and building owners, even they would have to look at changing their normal business of operations just to remain competitive in the market. I absolutely agree on that as well.
Sure.
And another thing that I wanted to touch upon was basically the fact that you raised on raising awareness. That is absolutely key factor as well. And as people look to going back into their work places from the extensive lockdowns, or they might be under lockdown for the full year and they might go back in the next year. Having seen all of this new technologies and integrations come into play, we know, like on a logical level, it's about safety, it's about health, it's about making sure that the employees are protected. But then on a personal level, the employees might feel that it's too much. They might be getting paranoid, or they might become scared of coming back into the workplace in the first place. So what do you think is again, like, how do you build up that confidence that people themselves are sort of normal going forwards with this sort of level of protection that is being provided for them for their benefit?
Brilliant. See, simple thing. I went into the office about 3 weeks ago after almost 4 to 5 months of working from home. I was also paranoid, and Siemens had put out a lot of things, and our comms colleagues had done a fantastic job in making sure we are all aware of what was going on. But I was still hesitant getting back into the office. But once I was in there, I could see the measures which were sent to us on emails, which were sent on their app and stuff, actually being implemented. There was a sticker on the desk which is changed daily, and it is stamped by the head of real estate. So they are taking care to make sure that places are sanitized. The density is maintained, it's restrictive, so people are not overcrowding spaces. People are not allowed to use meeting rooms, so the rooms were closed, certain desks were closed, there were stickers on it. Now I feel more confident getting back into the workplace, because I know these measures which they told us have actually been implemented already. So communication becomes very important, and like you said, spreading awareness, but at the same time, feedback also. You need to get the feedback from the employees to ask, what would you like us to do better? What would increase your confidence for coming into the workplace? In terms of things like, okay, what were you not comfortable with? What would give you confidence to say, yes, cool, this is fine. I will also become an advocate of telling other colleagues to come in. So education, keeping them informed, and making them part of the whole transformation is essential, because we don't know what would work, what would not work. Certain measures which are taken in the interest of the employees may backfire because we didn't think of certain things. So making them part of the whole journey gives them confidence. At the same time, it allows them to think, saying, yes, the company is taking my interest, my well-being into interest, and I feel safe, and I can get back to the office.
Fantastic. I think, yeah, it should be a two-way street on the communications part. Definitely from the employer or the organization side, but definitely from the people themselves. We have a question come in, so I'll just read it out loud to you, Tejas.
Sure.
Um, has it been proven that contact tracing and sensor-based technologies all over the offices reduces fear among employees and influences better productivity? So yeah, it's the same questions along the line. So what do you think?
So see, in terms of it's a simple thing. Would you feel more confident getting into an office where contact tracing is available versus not available? It's kind of like getting into the unknown, where if there is a potential infection in a workplace and you don't know who was infected and who that person came in contact with, that is a bigger fear for me or for the business. It's one thing is, it's not just about the employees' fear and productivity. It's also for the business continuity and risk reduction. If one employee gets sick and he spreads it to 10 other people, a critical business function may get impacted for the business. So you're looking at it, one, from fostering a safer environment, but at the same time, you're also looking at it from a business benefit of creating a safer workplace, which allows the businesses to run continuously. And that's where we said the education part is very critical. And to answer the specific question, that has it proven, it's too soon to say what is the outcome of this, because the technology is new and the issue is also very new. One thing is for sure is, yes, it does significantly reduce the risk and gives you a very accurate way of tracking infection spread. May not be in the office because you can still resort to working remotely from home, but for places like hospitals and factories or industries, it's super important for industries to have it, because the people who are running those machinery are very highly skilled people, and they are very highly trained to operate certain types of equipment. If that person takes sick, a certain section of the factory may have to close, and that takes an impact on the production. There were some case studies put out by a few companies, I can't remember the name, who said a day's closure of their factory results in about $1.5 to $2 million worth of loss. And this is a small number. If you grow the size of the factory, the losses you're looking at is significant. So contact tracing in offices may not be so relevant unless the office wants to have it at a certain capacity, but definitely in other types of facilities, contact tracing will be very, very essential.
Okay, perfect. And just along the same lines of this, the benefits and the risks of contact tracing. So you mentioned this, yes, it's really, really important. Maybe not in the office setting, but definitely in a more dense environment where operations is critical and where the chance of infection can rapidly spiral out of control. But the in terms of let's say the other benefits that you could get out of it, like what? So this is a question that that just came in as well. So is could it be uh, also implemented in a way that considers the health sort of implications, like what uh, the impact of the social distancing will have on people's well-being? Is it any possible to have introduce sort of these more sort of KPIs or sort of measurements to look into that?
See, as such, when you go to the office, the whole idea is, if you have to be away and sitting at your desk and not meeting anyone, you rather work from home, right? The whole idea of going into the office is actually to interact with people, to socialize, and to ideate and think together. Yes, social well-being is a very key topic. So a lot of companies now are investing heavily on employee wellness programs, because people are feeling disconnected, or when they get back to the office, they are not able to meet in a certain way. But at the same time, again, there has to be means of communication. Technology can only fulfill certain things, like it can warn you. You can still meet people, but practice 2-meter distancing, or practice don't shake hands, don't hug, don't kiss yet. stay away and still go to the office. So once you have adopted this kind of technology, you can create a flexible working environment where you give an opportunity to everyone to go into the office 2 or 3 days a week. So you are still maintaining the capacity at a certain limit, you're reducing the exposure, but you're also allowing people to get back to the social ecosystem of an office and a workplace where they're looking at seeing their teams, they're exchanging ideas, they're talking about the projects or their personal life itself, and catching up with friends in the workplace. So yes, it's super important to focus on the social aspect, but for us to cover that and ensure the risk is mitigated, that's where we'll have to rely on technology again.
Perfect. And moving on from that as well, I think this is a fantastic question related to the integration of these solutions. So as you mentioned, you can obviously use the information, the data that you're getting in real time, and use that information into driving the BMS and operations, the lighting, the HVAC. So one of the questions we got is, especially in densely crowded uh, facilities such as malls and hotels, can the contact tracing be integrated with HVAC systems to dynamically increase or reduce ventilation to those specific hotspots of density?
Yes, yes. The simple answer is yes. Not just based on contact tracing, but also from a perspective of occupancy and density. If we see certain section, maybe the food court is more occupied than certain other sections of the mall, you could divert energy, higher air changes to that section. Maybe the HVAC systems have UV lights now. When you see the capacity increasing beyond 40%, that can give a command to your BMS to turn on the UV lights so that it can sanitize the duct, or your UV filters come on, so you're able to pump air conditioning there. And that's a very valid question, and it's already being implemented in a few locations where they're taking the density information and modeling that to control the air conditioning and also trigger disinfection of air. See, again, contact tracing is something that measures the potential contact with the people. The infection is something that is outside of the remit of contact tracing. So if someone does get infected, contact tracing is used to retrospectively inspect and understand who are the people that have come in contact with. But
and who is at risk? Yeah.
Correct. Who is at risk? So for you to minimize that and isolate and take necessary precaution. But the integration to HVAC comes from the occupancy part, because that is what you need in real time to see which areas are dense, which areas are sparse, and focus cooling and cleaning efforts in the densely populated areas.
Okay. So in terms of actual technologies, this is not any different from the concept of, for example, occupancy sensors or CO2 sensors. It's just making sure that the integration of these solutions are optimized so that you're basically looking at your data that's coming in from your heat maps. You're looking at the pathways along which people are walking, and so basically you optimizing that space and utilizing it to the best of its capabilities. Correct?
Exactly. You're increasing the precision of all the other systems. How it is different from CO2 sensor is, there may be one CO2 sensor which says current CO2 level is 150 ppm, and by the afternoon is about 400 ppm, by evening is 900 ppm. But that doesn't tell you what is the occupancy of a space. All it tells you is, yes, the ppm has increased, the carbon dioxide has increased, so just supply fresh air. How do you know how many people were there? Yes, over a period of time, there may be certain number of people, that is what you could model, but you don't know exactly which area or do you want to actually focus on. If there's an open space with 30 desks and only 12 were occupied, but there are 2 carbon dioxide sensors on 2 corners, it will say the carbon dioxide level is this. What we are doing now is adding precision and pinpointing, saying this area needs to be clean, this area is busy. If you have VAVs or FCUs supplying that, you could command only those to actually ramp up or ramp down. So it's not very similar to CO2 sensors. It's kind of adding precision and detailing the workplace and creating a digital twin of the workplace itself from an occupancy perspective.
Perfect. That's an absolutely great answer. And Tejas, one of the last questions, you had mentioned there are already some projects that are that are utilizing these technologies. So these are projects, are live projects in the UAE, and um, is this something that you would be able to share publicly, or is it confidential? Could you just explain more about those
Uh,
projects?
um, uh, uh, because of the nature of the project, the name remains confidential, but soon we should be able to announce that publicly also. But yes, the occupancy density tracking, the IoT based lighting, the RTLS or people tracking are already live, not just implemented, they're live for the last year or so in certain governmental locations, and also in a very large oil and gas company in UAE. Now, because they had the IoT infrastructure, we are also deploying contact tracing as a pilot in some of these locations, because they still want to understand, is it how does it actually impact their business. But yes, we do have live projects in the UAE that are being executed and are already operational, and we should be able to share that. Just look out for our announcements. We will be posting that on social media and also releasing a press release.
Fantastic. We absolutely look forward to hearing those announcements, and please do share them with us at the Emirates GBC as well, so that we can obviously promote the new normal that's going to be coming out post COVID.
Absolutely. There's one question
So
I picked up, Jason,
yes,
regarding
go ahead.
the risks, maybe less privacy, radiation, and health impacts. So, in terms of radiation, that's a very valid question, because a lot of companies ask us, saying, when you deploy all these kind of technology within, is there an impact? Simple answer is no. The sensors are all we are talking about are digital PIR sensors, and they are all Bluetooth beacons. So there is no radiation as such. It's all Bluetooth, which is the same type of radiation you would have from your wireless earphones or your Fitbit or an Apple Watch, your phone, your iPad. It's the same kind of technology. You already are surrounded with Bluetooth around you, and Bluetooth low energy is a very, very low impact, and not low impact, has no impact on the human well-being or radiation aspect. So it's not RF, or it's not any other higher frequency. It's a very low bandwidth Bluetooth energy that is used.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I missed that question. Yeah, absolutely. It's worthwhile addressing that the new solutions that we're adding in are safe solutions. Essentially, they're meant to make people safe, and not shouldn't be worrying about the other health impacts of these solutions. Absolutely correct.
Correct.
And before we wrap things up, just one last question from my side as well. And this sort of goes back to one other comment that you had made during the presentation, which is people are social creatures. We need to interact with other people, and as you mentioned, the main reason of like going to the office, you could do the work at home, you could do the work depending on the nature of your job, obviously, but you could do the work at home, or you could do the work at your office. But
Right.
the social aspect of it is really important, and it's, I think there was a very very famous organization. I can't remember which one of the big ones it was, but essentially they had years ago they had moved away from having people come into the offices, and they allowed people to come into the to work remotely. But after like a few months, they reversed that policy, saying that the major innovations, the creative spark that comes into the organization is just through meeting with other employees and discussing that. So going forward as well, the new normal, I believe, shouldn't focus on social distancing as per se, but it should be rather physical distancing, but the social aspect should be there. And my
Correct.
last question to that would be, again, the role of IoT in facilitating that. So we're remaining physically distanced, but the social aspect of it
Right.
is definitely being maintained, right?
Absolutely. And see, with all this technology, we want to create safe spaces and not create jails or prisons in any workplace. We need to have technology which is non-intrusive. People need to go about doing their work. If you want to, if you feel like grabbing a coffee with your colleague, you should be free to do that. but technology should be tracking anything that could potentially expose you to risk and alert you saying, hey, please take care of doing this, so that it is not intrusive, but at the same time, you know constantly that, yes, your safety is primarily required, but social aspects are very important. And like you said, innovation, creativity, and collaboration is what drives the business. New ideas never actually come out. Yes, some of the times all the startups start in a garage, but it never started as a one person thing. It had to grow, so it needed people. So we definitely need to go back into offices, into cafes to meet and catch up with people. But we need to have not constantly worry about whether we are sick or will we be at risk. So once we have technology taking care of all of this and creating better spaces for us, and the space needs to work for us. It's not that we are putting in technology just for the sake of fitting it out with technology, but it should create a feeling of well-being and collaboration for employees. And very well said, physical distancing, but the social aspect should definitely exist.
Great, fantastic. Well, I think with this we can wrap up the webinar. So as I mentioned, the recording of the webinar will be sent out to everyone attending this and everyone who's registered as well. We'll be publishing the recording of the webinar approximately a week from now on our YouTube channel, as well as on our main website. So anyone can access this prior to that. So from EmiratesGBC side, Tejas, thank you. Cindy, thank you. Kubra, thank you. Everyone from Siemens for facilitating this wonderful webinar. It comes at a very important and timely manner. And I believe it's important to note that yes, things are challenging at this moment. There's also a lot of opportunities, as you had mentioned, into making sure that these challenges can become advantages going forward. So thank you, everyone, and I wish everyone a good day.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for having me, and have a good day to everyone. Bye for now.
Okay, fantastic. Bye-bye, everyone.